Moving into session number 3, panel number 2, the elementary years. Perhaps your house looks like that some days. All right, we're talking about preschool, kindergarten-ish, all the way up through 5th grade kind of ages here, the elementary years. Dad, I'll start with you. How about that? How can I begin having more earnest conversations about Christ and the gospel with my kids at this stage?
Similar to what Mark said about the previous stage, I think you can go a little deeper now in your conversations at this stage, but weave them throughout the course of your day. Don't just do them at nighttime. And stuff comes up during the day when you're with your kids that can raise these issues. Always connect things to God, always. God reigns over all things. He's at work in all things. So introduce your kids as they are able to comprehend to the wonders of nature and God's providence and so on. But make those connections for them initially. That's what I would say. And also, this is an age now where they're going to, their awareness is going to grow so much. And on things like sexuality, I would be... we recommend this 4-book series, God's Design for Sex. And I think it starts at 2 years old. And you just start, you don't sit down you don't just sit them down for 5 minutes before they go to junior high and then tell them about the sex act. You weave this into life about how God has made men and women and boys and girls and how they're different and how this is a good thing. And the God's Design for Sex, we just think is really great. It's put up by Nav Press. But have those kind of conversations with your kids while you're in the car, whatever you're doing. We did trivia with the kids. Like I would do a form of like Jeopardy, and I could gauge the level, the questions to the age of the child. So that even the 2-year-old you can ask the 2-year-old, who was Jesus' mom or something, and Luke could say Mary, and and then I would just make harder questions for the bigger kids. I love to do that. Make it kind of fun. Learn some things together. What else would I say about that? The questions. Just ask them questions.
Well, what about if parents say, it seems like too young to start talking about things like sex with them?
Well, you have to be the judge of what's appropriate. My general thought when it comes to those things is that if they're too young and they don't really get it and it kind of goes over their head, no big deal. But if they're old enough to understand it and you haven't taken the initiative to talk to them about it, you might be behind the curve already. Because as you know, everybody else out there wants to tell them about a contrasting worldview when it comes especially to areas of sex. But don't make it separated from life. Integrate it into life and talk about it.
Well, even like you did with when we were watching a show or something and the commercials would come on and you'd, instead of like turning off the commercial, you would say, let's watch this and see what are they really selling here? And talk to the kids about that.
In the later elementary years, you can start to do that where you teach them to discern things. So that was true because I was raised in a very separatistic home where everything was to be avoided. Don't see no evil, hear no evil, whatever that was. And don't expose the kids to it. And of course you don't want them. There are things not appropriate for kids. But I want to be the one processing this with them. So I'm not afraid to watch something with them, a commercial or something, and get them to think about what's the idea behind this. Same with the music. Listen to their music. I can remember my dad, he just wrote off anything with a beat because he would just say, oh, that's terrible, and he wouldn't think of it. Like as a parent, listen to the music with them, right? Get them thinking about that. I think that's good. Another thing that we did, now that you have to it depends on how you think your kids can handle this, what age they are, but I think later elementary years, if we're walking around somewhere and there's some vulgar stuff written on the walls, the graffiti out there, I would want to stop and talk to our kids about, explain what that is, and and why we don't talk that way. I want to stay ahead of the curve. That would be my recommendation.
Instead of no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. Then you go through a half-hour ceremony, and now it's yes, 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 and then wonder why adults have problems.
Yeah.
Instead of celebrating God's design,
Yeah.
knowing that from the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's right.
Colleen, how should we best celebrate our kids in these years?
I really think it starts in the preschool years. If you've done your job in the preschool years, disciplining, there's going to be a lot more no, no, no in those preschool years. And I hope then in your elementary years, it is more an affirmation with your kids. And it is just, again, more and more that scale Mark talked on, giving them more and more freedoms. In elementary years, I just hope you love being with your kids, love being a part of their lives, whether that's sporting events, music. Our kids were in Awana, memorizing verses with them, just celebrating all of those kind of things with them. And again, not just whether they win or did great at this or that, but again, their attitudes and how they're being more and more like God in these, more and more like Christ in these areas and things too. But yeah, just celebrate with them when you see that godly character coming out in all of their events too. I would say too though, I mean, we tried to attend everything we could of our kids and things, but every once in a while we would have something come up. Maybe we had counseling or, maybe I was leading a Bible study. And I don't think it's such a bad thing to say there's something more important than a little first grade t-ball game or whatever too. I think that's important to teach your kids that there are, other more important things in life too than just that one little game. But again, obviously you want to be at all those things too that you can. I don't know if this goes with celebrating or not, but I wrote this down. Know your child. Our kids were very different. We had one that you could talk to him, discipline or whatever, and they would say, okay, I get it, and they're fine. The other one would say, I am the worst person in the world. So just think of your kid's personality as you're talking to them, and just as you discipline in those ways too. Again, I don't know if this goes with celebrating or not, but I mean, again, we had a lot of issues in our elementary years between our kids too. One was arguments in the car on who gets the front seat. But we celebrated at the end of the week on Fridays. If they didn't fight in the car over that, we would go for McDonald's ice cream. So yeah, just find those ways that you can celebrate. We didn't go every Friday, but find those special times that you can celebrate with the kids.
Does the fact that when we're trying to affirm and encourage and celebrate our kids, does the fact that one's boys and girls does that affect anything of how we do we affirm and celebrate boys differently than we do girls, or is it kind of the same? Would you say?
I think you're already teaching them what biblical roles are, that there is a difference between boys and girls. And there are things that, as a dad, I'm looking to affirm in my son.
Yeah.
That's going to be different from what I'm affirming in my daughter.
Right.
So if I have those roles in mind of who God has created them to be, me to be, us to be, that should come out in what you affirm, what you don't affirm. And you can do that out of the gate. I was thinking of that literally today with Lukla, another $10. As she was...
You're going to be poor after this one.
Yeah, she was going down the steps at Kristen and Ellis's house, the wood steps that we usually always grab her hand, and she started doing it, and we were, immediately going, it's like, no, let her go. And she goes all the way down it by herself. And then at the bottom, praising her for that, but looking for opportunities to affirm them, not just for something physical, but even something that was obedient, so that, again, when you do correct them, that's not all you're doing. Because I know as a parent of young kids, you'll feel like I'm just correcting them. And you are at that stage. I mean, these are little sinners just like us that need to come to know the Lord. So you really have to be deliberate, I think, about looking for those opportunities to affirm them, and certainly with boys and girls, incorporate into that the roles that God's made for them.
So what should I do when I begin to have thoughts like, well, I wish my child was more blank, or I love my child, but I don't really like them at this moment? Like, what should I do when those kinds of thoughts and feelings come up in me as a parent?
That's supposed to be my question.
Yes, I'm throwing that to you.
You guys jump in here.
I'm throwing that to you.
Conversation.
I'm throwing that to you.
One of the things that I try to do in my mind is go back again to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I hope that doesn't sound trite. I hope you develop the ability to stop, take a breath. I go to Romans 5 a lot, Romans 5, 6 and following. When I was weak, when I was ungodly, when I was a sinner, when I was an enemy of Christ, Jesus Christ died for me. Not for a righteous person or a good person, but an enemy of Christ. He died for me. And I can rejoice that he's reconciling me to God. And I try to remember this is what Mark, God is doing for you right now, has done for you, will do, he's promised to. And let that gospel breath affect the way then that I parent and talk and even think in those moments when my kid is acting unlovely. I do that. And what does God do in my life? So I try to use those things to go back to that. And then that, it's really what Pastor Gregg was talking about earlier with Ted Tripp. Stop, pray for yourself, remind yourself who you are in Christ, and let that impact the way that you think about your child. And it's gonna make all the difference in the world. And you can start that right out of the gate and use these opportunities to do it.
And so I would assume that's how you to ask a leading question, how you dealt with, how you deal with anger, especially as a dad. As men, generally that's where we're going to be tempted to go, anger, and when things aren't going right. Is that so? You would say that's the strategy that you would use?
Yeah, absolutely. To go back to the gospel in my thinking, to think who I am, how patient God is with me. I need to walk in the Spirit. This love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, and let that come out. So to stop and come up above the trees of the situation, remind myself who I am in Christ, what he's doing for me, and then go back and deal with it.
I would also add that you may not like certain things about your child, but boy, there's got to be a lot of stuff to really like about them that you can discover. So you might have to get a little creative and think outside the box of ways to make some new memories with them or experiences that now you share together that will bond you. I think you can do that. You can find something that you both enjoy and make a point of doing that. And then I was going to mention earlier, one thing that I did with Leah, I don't remember when I started it. Yeah, she was in early elementary years. Every year for her birthday, I would take her out specifically as a dad to buy her a dress. And so, and if you knew Leah, she's not the most decisive person in the world. So I would have to look at a lot of dresses. And then she couldn't make up her mind. And every year it got to be this way. It's like, oh, you just decide. I'll just wait here, Leah. But that became a routine for us. And then we'd go home and take a picture of her in a new dress. And I always felt that was like affirming her femininity as her dad, because it was just Leah and me had established that tradition. So you can think of things like, and it wasn't that I didn't like her then and I tried to make that up, but you can find traditions though, even if you're in kind of a dry period.
Mom, in these crucial years, the elementary years, what aspects of our parenting will most impact the identity of our children as they grow, for good or for ill?
Yeah, one of the most important things I feel is that how we speak to them is very important, and our tone of voice, our body language. There's a saying that the way we speak to them becomes their inner voice. And if you think of that, like maybe in situations where you've been raised, maybe your parents were really harsh with you, or they made you feel like you're not any good, that sticks with you, and that's hard to get rid of. And so it's not like we want to go to the opposite end where we're always telling them, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so wonderful, you're so wonderful, and we make them an idol. We don't want that either. But we do want to seek to affirm them as often as we can. And not just in if they had the best baseball hit or they got the best grades or anything like that. Those are good things to praise them on. But we want them to see what we think is more important is their character and how they're growing into Christ. And you can even do that with a 4-year-old. Just say, wow, you know what? I noticed when I was at your house, you're really listening to mommy so much more. That means you're following Jesus. And they'll go, wow, they'll look at you like that. And you encourage that, they'll want to keep listening to mommy then. And so affirming them like that and saying it in a gentle voice like that, that does a lot for a child to grow in obedience. We have already talked about this, but pour into them the truth of the gospel in every single situation. Say yes to them as often as you can. We say no a lot of times, but say yes to all the things that you can as often as you can. Spend time with them. These years are amazing because they're growing and questioning and learning. Spend time with them and ask them questions and just say, even ask them, what do you think God's really helping you learn right now in your life as a 3rd grader or a 5th grader? And then if they don't know, they'll maybe ponder that a little bit more, but just have conversations like that. So it's always pointing them to God. And also it's important when they've done something wrong and they've struggled, tell them, you know what, when I was your age, guess what? This is what mommy did. This is what happened to mommy. This is what daddy did. Daddy struggled with, I got kicked off the basketball team because I got so ticked off a lot. I didn't have self-control. Share those kind of things with the kids because they might see you as like, wow, you're the perfect parent, but you're not. You weren't perfect. You had to grow and learn too. And also within that realm too is to please ask forgiveness of your child when you have wronged them. When you have, like Luke said, been prone to anger or something like that. I remember going into our kids' room after I disciplined them and I yelled at them or something. I just go, there's no excuse for mommy to have yelled at you like that. Please forgive me. And I didn't say, but because you were this or you weren't listening. No, don't add any buts. You confess to them, I was wrong. Please forgive me and own up to what you did. And that teaches them a lot too. But we should do that anyway as parents often when we've blown it.
Throw this out to everybody. What other encouragements would you give at specifically for this stage to parents? I know, Colleen, you mentioned something about Mark's chart that he talks about. What's that? What's that about to either one of you? What's Mark's chart? Yes. What's the concept there?
It's entitled A Parent and Child Relationship, and it talks about, it's my speaker weird.
Try that one.
Switch.
Is this?
Yes.
Okay. And it just talks about starting with nurturing and structured control. That's going to be when they're little. There's going to be a lot more of that. And then as it gets more and more up the chart, there's going to be a lot more admonition and building inner convictions. And that should get more and more, the more thing that they're doing, less of our having that structured control and more of building inner convictions on them, and more their responsibility. So that's kind of how the chart goes. Probably
So
can't see
as
it.
they grow and mature and show more character,
Correct.
I'm opening up the amount of
Yes.
responsibility I'm giving them.
Yes.
I'm not automatically doing that just because they're getting older. Am I automatically doing that, or is this no? This is if you're showing me.
No, that's you're praying that is as you're instructing,
Yeah.
and you're giving them that more freedom that they are wanting to follow God's word, follow your instruction, and that gives them more and more freedom. And again, the gospel, again, is what the key to all of that is. You want your kids to know the gospel, to love the gospel, to accept that. And then that's where you can really see a difference in their lives. So, yeah.
What form does discipline and instruction take in this stage? What's it look like?
One thing that I think is very important, that you do it privately. You don't do it in front of everyone else. You don't do it in front of the other siblings. You take them into the other room, and you're calm, you're patient, your voice is still the same. It's not angered, but because you are shepherding their heart, and you're trying to get to their heart. And so if you can't be that way, then take a little break yourself, a little time out before it, like Paul Tripp did and his wife reminded him, and then go into the other room. And sometimes you might even have to leave a restaurant or leave a movie or leave whatever. It should be immediate. It shouldn't be, wait till dad gets home. It's, if you're home with the child, you are the disciplinarian. Obviously, if dad's home, it's nice if dad can be the one to take them into the other room and be in charge. But be immediate, I would say.
I'd say ours too was definitely less, but probably a little more severe when we were punishing. At that point, we always go back to the store. Our kids loved going to Pacer games, and Grandpa would get them tickets every year to go to a couple Pacer games. And one year, I don't even remember what was happening with them, but they were not able to go to the Pacer game. And that crushed them in many ways. But it really made them think how serious their sin issue was. And I'm sure Kristen still remembers that to this day. So yeah, I think it was not as often in elementary years as it was younger years, but there were some severe punishments.
I would add that on the flip side of all of that, I think God does this with us a lot, and I think we should do with our kids from time to time, is surprise them with something generous or something out of the ordinary. And the example I can think of that still is really vivid to me, when I was must have been the summer between my 4th and 5th grade year, my dad rang the doorbell. We lived 10 miles out in the country. Doorbell rang. I ran up. I opened the door, and there was a mini bike on the front step. Brand new mini bike. It was yellow. And my dad had sold a truck to a guy and got this mini bike, and he gave it to me. And it was so cool. And because we lived out in the country, my dad really encouraged me to drive it everywhere. And that still blesses me when I talk about it today, that my dad would do something like that out of the ordinary to just bless me. And that has helped me a little bit in my understanding too of how God does that. Unexpected blessings. So discipline, yes, by all means. The Bible clearly talks in Proverbs that if you don't discipline, you participate in the death of your child. The warnings are really stern in Proverbs to parents about discipline. But boy, sprinkle some of that just unexpected generosity for your kids too, so they you surprise them sometimes.
Yeah, I remember when you pulled me out of school early in the middle of the day one time, and we went and saw Black Hawk Down. Remember that movie? That was awesome.
We were in high school.
I don't know. Elementary.
Not elementary.
Welcome to
Mother
the
would not have approved.
Welcome to the world, son. No. Last question, and then we'll be done. Again, with this issue of that's prevalent today with screen time. How would you handle screen time at this stage? What would be a wise way to handle that?
Regulate it.
Moderation.
At the very least.
Sometimes if you don't have it at all, then they really want it. So
prohibition doesn't always work.
Yeah,
No.
because I had one of my closest friends at this age of my life, These parents didn't let them watch any TV. So whenever they came to my house, all he wanted to do was watch TV all the time. He didn't want to do anything but watch TV. So sometimes that'll happen. So I agree, if you just, you do what you need to do before the Lord, but if you totally shut them out, it might backfire on you. The law increases the trespass.
I would say try not to use it as a babysitter, like in the grocery store, giving your child a phone, giving them an iPad, in the car. Use even like car time. I know it's easier and it's a lot easier on you as a parent, but use that to talk or listen to books on tape and then discuss them or sing songs with each other or, go around and ask each other questions, play games in the car. Like when I was bringing Luke and Tracy's kids to school with me for a few years, I was trying to think of games all the time that we could go around and, every letter of the alphabet, we'll think of a fruit or we'll think of a Bible character or something like that. And, just things like that, because what does that do? That bonds you together as a family rather than everybody's on their, just looking down and you're not engaging as a family. Not that you can't do that every once in a while if you're on a 15-hour road trip, but just try to do it very minimally because otherwise it can start to grow, and then your children become different. They will change if they're in screen time a lot.
I'd say too, keep it in your family room or what. Don't have it in the kids' bedrooms and keep it in a commons area. So you can control it and they're not all alone and
Becomes secretive, yeah.
And you definitely have to make sure you know what they're watching or where they're going.
Also explain to them why you're doing it, not just because I said so and that's it, but explain to them as a parent, you're standing before God someday and you're given the authority to help shepherd their hearts. And this is how mommy and daddy aren't going to do everything right, but this is how mommy and daddy think that we should do this for our family. This family, your friends might do things differently. You're not in charge. We're not in charge of your friends. This is what we do in our family, and so we're going to honor mom and dad and listening and abiding by that because God loves you, we love you, and this is what we think we need to do in our family.
Comes out of that overall mindset. It's not just the technique. Remember one of the functional things we would do from time to time, I primarily would drive on trips, and every once in a while we would switch that up, and I on purpose would sit in the back seat with the kids in order to talk to them. Just to talk to them, and had a goal not to shut down the conversation. I wasn't going to barge in and just keep obnoxiously asking them questions type of thing, but would try to start a conversation, even have something that I wanted to talk to them about, and literally switch the driving role just to be able to talk. And sometimes as especially as dads, you need to do that. And these elementary years are precious. And they'll remember that. They'll remember you taking the time to do that.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
It's really, I am so thankful that I did not have an iPhone or a cell phone when I was raising our kids. I really thank God for that. We barely, I think we just had a cordless phone by then. And so it's such a temptation for you to be on your phone. And I don't want this to be a guilt thing, but is that, what do we want our kids to remember us by, like, always looking at this, constantly? Like, you can be on your phone and do things on your phone. Like, I do emails, I order groceries on my phone and all that. But when you're with your kids, make sure you have eye contact and you're engaged with your children. And then when they go to bed or whatever time, if they're, you can use your phone, but just be really, really careful because it's so easy to fall into that. Much like our kids. And then we get more and more addicted, just like our kids do, to screen time. So, and I say that for myself right now, even as an adult, so that I'm not doing that when I'm in the car with Gregg. Because that's really disrespectful to him when I'm just like this, answering emails or whatever and not engaging with him in the car. You see that?
Making up for all that lost time when the kids were little.
So, no. So, no, I got 2 confessions out there now, okay? Where's yours?
Oh.
I confess 2 of my sins. You guys know I'm real. I want you to know it's just such a temptation, and don't get sucked into that. Like those kind of things, Satan just weasels their way into your life like that. And so just be careful, that's all.
I will say, one thing that I didn't appreciate enough about Heidi, I used to make fun of her because we were different in this area. She was very structured, and I'm a roll with the flow kind of guy. And she would lay out their clothes for the next morning, set out their dishes for breakfast and all this. And I was just kind of like, want to make fun of her doing all that kind of stuff. I look back now, though, and that really built structure into the lives of our kids that was really positive and helpful. So there's my confession.
You got to do another one, because I did too.
We got 2 more sessions tomorrow. There's plenty of time.
Oh, yeah.
Let's thank our panelists. Let's thank our panelists. All right. Tomorrow we will have a session, our opening session, Fighting for Joy in Our Parenting, and then we will do 2 more of these. We will do the teenage years, and we will do the college/empty nester years. There's dessert down there, but on your way, make sure you pick up your kids and then hang out for as long as you want. Thank you for being here tonight.